The question that has divided humanity. Imagine standing at the edge of a silent mountain just before sunrise. The air is still. The world hasn't fully awakened. You close your eyes and ask yourself one question. Is there really a God? For thousands of years, billions of people have searched for the answer. Some kneel in churches. Some pray in mosques. Some meditate in temples. Some study science. And others spend an entire lifetime searching without ever finding certainty. But among all the world's great religions, one tradition stands apart in a way that surprises many people. Buddhism. Unlike Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, Buddhism does not begin with a creator. Instead, it begins with a problem. Human suffering. This single difference has confused millions of people. If Buddhists don't worship God, who do they pray to? Who created the universe? Where do morality and purpose come from? And perhaps the biggest question of all, did the Buddha deny God's existence? Many people assume the answer is yes. But the truth is far more fascinating. In fact, the Buddha rarely argued about whether God exists. Not because the question wasn't important, but because he believed humanity was asking the wrong question. Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most misunderstood teachings in history. Not to prove one religion right, or another wrong, but to understand why Buddhism takes such a radically different path. And by the end of this journey, you may discover that the Buddha's greatest lesson wasn't about God at all. It was about you. The misunderstanding that changed everything. One of the biggest myths about Buddhism is that Buddhists are atheists. While some Buddhists identify as atheists, Buddhism itself isn't simply atheism. It's something much more subtle. Imagine visiting a doctor because you're suffering from a painful illness. Instead of asking how the universe began, you ask, how can I stop this pain? The doctor doesn't begin with a lecture about astronomy. He begins with your wound. According to Buddhist tradition, that's exactly how the Buddha approached life. He looked around and saw something undeniable. People suffer. The rich suffer. The poor suffer. Children suffer. Kings suffer. Even those who seem happy eventually experience loss, sickness, aging, and death. Rather than spending his life debating invisible realities, the Buddha asked a different question. Why do we suffer, and can suffering end? That question became the foundation of Buddhism. The prince who had everything. More than 2,500 years ago, a prince named Siddhartha Gautama lived in luxury. His father wanted to protect him from every form of pain. No sickness. No old age. No death. Only beauty. Only pleasure. Only comfort. But reality has a way of breaking through every illusion. One day, the prince left the palace. And for the first time, he saw an old man. Another day, he saw someone terribly sick. Then, a corpse. Finally, a wandering monk whose face carried a peace unlike anything the prince had ever seen. In that moment, everything changed. The question that consumed his heart wasn't, who created the universe? It was, why must every human being suffer? That question would eventually transform him into the Buddha, the awakened one. What Christianity begins with, and what Buddhism begins with. To understand why Buddhism seems so different, we must first understand where each path begins. In Christianity, everything begins with God. God creates the universe. God creates humanity. Human beings fall into sin. God offers salvation. The relationship between humanity and God becomes central. In Buddhism, the story begins somewhere entirely different. Life contains suffering. Suffering has causes. Those causes can end. And there is a path that leads to freedom. Notice something remarkable. One path asks, Who created us? The other asks. Why are we suffering? Neither question is foolish. They are simply focused on different concerns. This is why comparing Buddhism to Christianity can sometimes feel like comparing medicine to architecture. Both are meaningful, but they are trying to answer different questions. Did Buddha believe in God? Here's where things become truly surprising. The Buddha never made belief in a creator God the center of his teaching. He also did not spend his life trying to convince people that no gods exist. Ancient Buddhist texts describe many heavenly beings and deities. But these beings are not all-powerful creators. They, too, are portrayed as existing within the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Even the gods, according to Buddhist thought, are not free from impermanence. This means that enlightenment is considered higher than heavenly status. In Buddhism, liberation comes not through the favor of a creator but through wisdom, ethical living, and deep understanding of the mind. That idea was revolutionary then, and it remains revolutionary today. The arrow parable. One of the Buddha's most famous teachings illustrates this perfectly. Imagine a man struck by a poisoned arrow. His friends rush to remove it, but the man refuses. Instead, he says, "Wait. First tell me who shot the arrow. What is his name? What wood was the arrow made from? Which village did he come from?" The Buddha explained that if the man insists on answering every one of those questions before removing the arrow, he will die. The urgent problem is not who fired the arrow. The urgent problem is the poison. In the same way, the Buddha believed humanity often becomes consumed by endless metaphysical debates while ignoring the suffering that is happening right now. Fear, anger, greed, jealousy, attachment. These are the poisons he urged people to remove first. So if Buddhism isn't centered on believing in God, what does it ask us to believe in? The answer may surprise you. The Buddha didn't ask people to accept his words blindly. He invited them to investigate their own minds, to test his teachings through experience, to see for themselves whether compassion reduces suffering, whether mindfulness brings clarity,